Good morning and welcome to Better Thyself segment of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We are always in search. We are always in search of happiness. And what is that happiness? Is not an elusive concept, although it varies from individual to individual. But the societal happiness is in fact the sum total of the happiness of the individual. And that state of happiness is based on certain parameters. Defining happiness, and I'm not talking of the definition, I'm talking of basically identifying how to have the pillars, identify the pillars that support happiness, the concept of happiness. As if you remember, it is said that the pilot would ask, what is justice, and not remain for the answer. The same is true of happiness. What is happiness? You can ask for it, and the concept would differ, the nature would differ. But then it may not be possible to encapsulate it in a formula. And yet, I feel that the real happiness can be traced to that historic meeting between Alexander the great Macedonian conqueror, and the scantily clad Greek philosopher Diogenes. Diogenes was a philosopher who lived in a giant walls on the streets of Sinope and thought nothing of begging for food or defecating in public. An absolutely disgusting creature, but he was always singing, he was always dancing. And happiness for Alexander the Great was about relishing the best of food, the best of clothing, wealth, and most important, ever increasing power. Possibly the first person to think of having a world empire. And Diogenes, on the other hand, believed that happiness is attained by leading a life of simplicity, free from constant struggle for wealth and for power. And Alexander, hearing about him, went to meet Diogenes to offer him good food, health, accommodation. He said, I don't need anything. Alexander was nonplussed and he asked, well, what can he do for him? And the wise man snapped back to everyone's astonishment. Move aside. Let me enjoy the sunshine. Don't block it with your shadow. Now, this shattered the ego, the pride of Alexander the Great. But then later on he thought, ruminated, and then he said, if I were not Alexander, I would be happy to be Diogenes. It's apparent that Alexander was in search of happiness. Years later, at his deathbed, he was 32, he had three wishes, three dying wishes, of which the second is the most thought provoking. When my coffin is being carried to the grave, let the entire path leading to the graveyard be strewn with all the wealth of the gems and the precious stones that I've conquered. Let the world know that I cannot take even a farthing with me. Ultimately, all these precious stones will return to dust, just like my body. The life is basically like diamond, and it shines, but then you have got to remove the dust. And if you remove the dust, see the life in an entirety, you would see that concealed in this life are five priceless gems. And those gems, if we can find them, if we can identify them, define the parameters of happiness. And this elusive happiness becomes something real, something concrete. The first one, simple, an honest heart, and it would not take credit for success or blame, another for failure. Normally, what we do is whenever we fail, we want to find a scapegoat. So, if you accept the responsibility, it will give you, if ego is self boost. And then basically, you take a credit, you don't say it's you, okay, it's ours. Acknowledging your indebtedness, your gratitude to your teachers, the leaders, the philosophers, parents, well wishers, causes an ocean of gratitude to swell, and that would increase happiness. Gratitude is basically the road to the happiness, and we spontaneously want to share our joy without expecting anything in return. That's the real gratitude. Share your joy, share your thanks, and be honest. That is the first parameter. But that's not enough. You have got to understand that appreciation is like a spice, and a spice adds a special flavor to the recipe of life. You cannot help feeling deep affection for anyone who has gone out of the way to help you. So, appreciation is the second May gem that will define the parameters of happiness. Now, appreciation has got to be sincere. Appreciation, if it takes a form of psychophancy or flattery, is something abhorrent, and it takes away from your happiness. It reduces it. It doesn't add to it. And then the third is listening to the others, having empathy. That's the most important thing. You must have experienced that soothing sensation whenever somebody listens to your troubles and worries with the concern. He may not do anything, but the very fact that you have got an ear in which you can pour your problems, and that ear is not clogged, there is a shoulder on which you can lay your head and weep or sigh, and the shoulder is there to support your drooping head. That sense of empathy would give you happiness. Listening to the others out of pity is bad, out of empathy is great. Then you need to have the ability to enter into the human heart, and there is no such person whose heart you cannot handle. There's an intimate extent that you two become one, not two. And the virtue of empathy is so desperately needed in this world, where people are generally accustomed to flee when they come upon someone in distress, because they have become habituated to demanding. Very few people are willing to give. Now that's an important parameter. That's again. Try to give rather than take. And there cannot be a better example of that than Sir Philip Sidney. He was dying in the battlefield. All around him there were dead bodies. And he felt desperately thirsty. He looked around and then he saw that there was a water bottle with him. He opened it. He was going to drink it. And then he just happened to look sideways and there was a soldier, a lowly soldier, while he was the general. And the soldier was looking with uh, eyes full of pain and agony, and desire to have water. Sir Philip Sidney passed on his water bottle to the soldier and saying, "Thy need is greater than mine," gave him the water and breathed his last, died. But then that last moment of giving and empathy combined gave him ineffable happiness, maybe for a couple of seconds. But isn't happiness always transient and has much less time? It's not prevailing, as Hardy says. Happiness is an occasional episode in the general drama of pain. So, in that pain, Sir Philip Sidney got a few seconds of happiness. But those few seconds are worth hours and hours of pain and misery. And then nothing worthwhile can ever be attained without sacrificing. So, to get happiness, we have got to sacrifice what? Some comfort. Because whenever you try to reach out to those who are lost in the darkness, despair, then you have got to become a bit comfortable, uncomfortable to get up from your couch and give them the comfort. So, when you help people feel inspired to rise and walk with hope, your reward is happiness because you are satisfied that you have made another individual, another human being get up. Helping people wherever possible has a rebounding effect. The only thing is, when we define helping in the shape of giving money, in the shape of giving them some way with them, that may not give you happiness. That can boost your ego that you are being charitable. But charity by itself is happiness withdrawing, reducing phenomenon. It boosts your ego, all right. Socially, you might be more acceptable, all right. But you are encouraging parasitism. Instead of charity, if you are helping somebody, as they say, it's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. And when you teach somebody to fish, that's the secret of happiness. But the charity as considered now, okay, I say it, being charitable in the sense that I can call it empathy, empathetic help is an inexplicable miracle because it gives, which is blossoming and growing. And then your heart begin to overflow with happiness. And that happiness is mutual. Somebody with whom you have empathized, somebody to whom you have given support, help, and I'm again talking moral support, physical support, not necessarily money support, but if need is there, yes, that gives you happiness and it gives happiness to a person who receives. They say the quality of mercy is not strain. So is the quality of empathy and charity and gratitude not strain. Coming back to the original story I was talking to you about Alexander, his distress, his pain, his misery, his unhappiness, and he was becoming an alcoholic. His distress lay in usurping transitory worldly treasures that ultimately turned to dust. Diogenes' happiness was in relishing nature's everlasting gift of sunshine. Imagine in a complete environment of sadness, a ray of sunshine coming, illuminating all the dark corners and crevices. That will give you happiness. So Diogenes' happiness was in enjoying the bounty of nature, not material health, and there was a spirit of satisfaction. Again, I'm not saying contentment. I'm not saying you should be contented. It is better to be a discontented Socrates than to be a contented pig. So don't be contented, but be full of gratitude for what you have and then strive for more. What happens normally is the, what happens normally is that we are not happy with what we are and we strive for more and more. As a matter of fact, there has to be pausal times. You pause, take stock of what you have, enjoy it, think about it, let it permeate your very existence so that it gives you happiness. And on that plateau, build up the next step. And that gradual progress would make you happy. These five parameters of happiness. And again, I'm not saying become an ascetic. Don't run away. I'm not saying be always giving up. No, it begins with you and then it slowly expands. But gratitude for what you have and not only material but immaterial things. Help, empathy, giving. These are the parameters of happiness and they make you really happy rather than diamonds and gold. Ultimately, moral values, ethical attitude, human behavior, I call it, and you must have heard me use the word homo sapien all the time. And most important, being authentic, sincere, honest, even brutally honest, will make you happy. And all the pain and misery would dissolve in that happiness and would be forgotten. Or at least you can ignore that. But happiness would be a state of mind that will depend on these pillars. Think about it. Thank you.